Merry meet Annie here. The topic of today's vlog is aloneness in the season of Samhain. What comes to mind for you when you hear the word aloneness? Perhaps loneliness or sadness, often accompanying emotions to the experience of being alone. But aloneness in the season of Samhain is a powerful thing and unlike that. It's an aspect of the silence aspect of the season of Samhain, but it's not necessarily about being quiet. It's an aspect of the solitude aspect of the season of Samhain, but it's not necessarily about being withdrawn. Esther Buchholz writes about this kind of aloneness, this season of Samhain aloneness, in her book entitled The Call of Solitude. She writes, "Just as the need and love for food is satisfied in many ways, a gourmet meal, a snack, cooking lessons, grazing, or a barbecue, alone time can be found while with another, in crowds, in sleep, or in alert and chosen isolation. It does not even require quiet and stillness. Alone time can be found in a room full of people dancing, in prayer, in nature, in the creative act, at the computer, or with your mate." Whenever I retake the Myers-Briggs personality test, I am reminded again that I am an introvert to the nth degree. There's hardly any E that shows up in that test for me. I'm all about the I. So perhaps aloneness has been, well, an easy thing for me because of that, the inherent nature of my nature. Although I have to say that I have some very extroverted friends who are also excellent at the aloneness thing. I thought to share some of my times of aloneness that truly feed my soul and define who I am. That's one of the important things about aloneness in the season of Samhain. It's a yet another way to explore who we are, sometimes who we are uniquely. For me, I agree with Esther, and being in nature is most definitely my aloneness. Walking, being in movement in nature particularly, although sitting still does it also. Walking alone, may I say. Although walking with another who has no desire to walk and talk, well, that also feeds my aloneness, and I'm grateful for the companionship. I agree with Esther, too, that time with my mate is my aloneness. Time within my home feels that way. It's probably all bound up in the same thing, as I have no need of outside energy when I am within the cocoon that my husband and I have created within the small world of our home and our dogs. And my car transports me to another aspect of my aloneness. I love to drive. I like driving by myself, being the only one in the car, driving along with my music blaring, singing along to it, just me and my tunes. There's a capsule world there that's one of my favorite places of aloneness. Reading expresses my aloneness, the kind of reading where it's just me and my thoughts. Whether a book is fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter. It's more about how my thoughts keep me company in those times. So perhaps it's more of those times of uninterrupted reading. Cross-stitching is definitely my aloneness. While my hands are busy, you wouldn't believe the places my brain goes in the conversations I am having with myself. A crowded beach is my aloneness. Yes, I said a crowded beach. Most crowded places are. In the midst of the hustle and bustle around me, I can choose to feel that I'm an island and a bit of an observation post, where I see what's going on around me from a place that is very internal and personal. My meditation and ritual times are definitely my aloneness. And I protect those spaces by carefully considering what or who I invite to join me there. Again, it isn't about being alone. It's more about having a sense of who you are in the midst of your surroundings. Any place, this is at the big picture level of aloneness, any place where I make an intentional choice is a place of my aloneness. And the single times in my life, I gloried in making decisions on my own. But being partnered doesn't mean that my choices don't still have the power of my singularity within them. Perhaps it's better said that in any moment in my life, I'm asserting my free will. I am in my aloneness. Aloneness is not loneliness. I read somewhere the best ever explanation, as far as I was concerned, between aloneness and loneliness. A loneliness is solitude that contains deep-rooted sorrow. Feeling unwillingly separated from someone or something, or feeling the absence of something, identified or not, in our lives. That's loneliness. Aloneness is solitude that comforts, calms, and nourishes. They are two very different things. We explore aloneness in the season of Samhain because the season is not about relationships. It's about being sovereign in our own sphere. That sphere connects us to many, and the season holds its moments of community and celebration. But in this season, we are asked not to define ourselves by those relationships. We choose, then, not to define ourselves by those relationships. Aloneness isn't about avoiding others. It's about being whole within ourselves. Aloneness does not feel like it is missing something. It knows it's complete on its own. It doesn't look to others to complete it. The enemy of aloneness is the need to let others define us or to define ourselves in comparison to others. Aloneness aligns with the season to remind us we learn by our relationship with others, indeed with everything. But the greatest of all relationships is the one we have with ourselves. It's the season of water after all. And what greater aspect of love is there than self-love? My favorite quote on aloneness is by Rumi. And he wrote, "There is nothing outside of yourself. Look within. Everything you want is there. You are that." And he capitalized the T in "you are that." Nature, at this time of the year, teaches me about the power of aloneness in times of heavy fog. Walking in the woods or even just down the street, you see well only that which is nearby. Each thing in its aloneness, a kind of beautiful separateness, even though it's part of whatever surrounds it. The fog in a way separates everything, and everything becomes completely unique. When walking in the fog, everything around me is hushed and softened in volume and color, and it feels like I am the center of the universe. The sound of my footsteps magnified, my breathing too. And if I stop and listen, my heartbeat becomes the soundtrack of my aloneness. I'm also inspired to consider aloneness in vignettes that are quickly fading from the land I live on, where development and overdevelopment is the word of the day. But for now, there are still fields, and in them might be a lone tree. So beautiful, because in that landscape there is nothing like it nearby. I'm always mystified by rolling fields that have a singular tree that looks like it's been there for a long time in the midst of it. In the distance in these old farm lands and fields will be a copse of trees where a house stood in days long gone. Another kind of aloneness, that kind of memory. And often in fields that have been plowed for centuries, the very carefully preserved headstones of a family cemetery from generations ago. To me, there's something so unique and powerful in those images. And when I'm out and about, maybe driving in my car alone, with it singing along to my songs, I stop for a moment of what feels like reverence when I see a tree alone in a field, or a copse of trees where a house was, or the remainders of an old family cemetery. There's something about that aloneness that is beautiful and distinct, in a way kind of proud. And I return to those considerations of what aloneness might be. Whenever my aloneness is somehow tinged with sorrow. I wish you mirth and reverence in this season of Samhain. Merry part.